Hey guys, what is up? SuperKmanrocks here, and I am here for my Week 7 LPL overview, analysis, and of course, at the end, my updated power rankings. We are back here in the LPL. We've got 7 full days of games to talk about, so I don't want to waste too much of your time. I don't want to waste too much of my time. No statements need to be made here. We can actually just jump right into the video. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and jump right into our first day of LPL action. And our first series on day 1 here was Team WE taking on Anyone's Legend. And Anyone's Legend continue their streak here. They're kind of unprecedented, unexpected, I will say, run so far through the LPL, as they pick up another 2-0 win here. Yes, this one's against WE, so it's not the most impressive of all of their wins, but at the same time, like, this is a team that WE, or AL, I should say, wasn't normally picking up a ridiculous amount of points against before, so to have such a clean 2-0 win here, which is really what this was 2 relatively clean. I mean, game 1 was a little iffy, but you know, relatively clean 2-0 wins here against WE, I think is very, very good for Anyone's Legend. They looked very good in this one, mostly off the back of their jungler that just continues to explode this season, having one of the biggest breakout seasons of anybody in the entire league here. Of course, I'm talking about Xiao Hao, who has really been phenomenal in the jungle for Anyone's Legend. Another good game of Wukong, but really this is for the Diana game in game 2. You don't even really have a lot to facilitate this Diana pick here. Obviously, Diana Swain as a duo isn't necessarily something I would look at and be like, oh, that is a dominant mid-jungle duo right there. Diana wants to play super aggro, wants to go for these ganks, and it's not particularly Swain's playstyle to do the same, but Xiao Hao was just able to control the entire map here on the Diana, was able to get the Kalista and the Amumu pretty far ahead as well with the Swain. Like, obviously, those two did link up and did get a lot done, but really, this was Xiao Hao just controlling the game. In game 1, he did a really good job of getting Betty in a position to carry the game on the Aphelios here, and Anyone's Legend just looks really cohesive. Yes, they do have kind of a playstyle, like one playstyle that they tend to go to when things are going wrong, which is Xiao Hao and Chocho need to get everybody out of the way so that Betty can carry, and Betty will carry once he gets to that point, but it works, and if it works, it works, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and call you one-dimensional until you start getting beaten on that one dimension, right? That you can't adapt when somebody shows you that they have you figured out there, but that just hasn't happened yet for Anyone's Legend. They're on an absolute roll right now, and I'm happy to see it. Everybody playing relatively well, mostly Xiao Hao and Betty, I will say, but Forge also had a pretty good series here. Like I said, that Swain game in game 2 was pretty good, and then ZDZ on the Kennen in game 1 I liked. As for WE, honestly, it's not nearly as bad as some of their losses have been this year. They had some ups and downs. They were in game 1. Jing actually had quite a bit of gold on the Kalista, but obviously it's hard. You're going to get outscaled on the Kalista, so it's just a little difficult to be proactive there on that pick. And then Shanks had quite a bit of gold on the Azir as well. However, he was pretty determined to run it down over and over again in that game 1. So even though he had a lot of gold and was doing a lot of damage in those team fights, he was also a little bit of the reason they were in the predicament that they were in the first place. So certainly not a great game from them. And then in game 2, it was really just, I mean, they were just worse. Like, they got out-macroed the entire game. It wasn't a lot of fighting. Really not an LPL-style game, more of an LCK-style game here, that Anyone's Legend just kind of bled out WE over the course of 27 minutes. And, yeah, it wasn't the best game, wasn't the worst game either. Kadaya being the sacrificial lamb, I think, for the team a lot of the time. Unfortunately, he's going to get the dud of the series. I didn't think he was actually that bad, especially in game 1 on the Rel here, getting Jing ahead on the Kalista. I do think this bot lane has been relatively better for WE than anything else they've been able to put out this year. That's not saying a lot. They're still one of the worst bot lanes in the league, but, you know, we're talking about a team that was putting out what is consensus like the worst bot lane in the league for most of the year. Obviously, not having won a series yet, having, you know, going 0-9 to start the year is definitely rough, but even with Kadaya getting the dud of the series here, I still think that he is probably an upgrade to what they were offering at the beginning of the year. Like I said, Beishang had not a great series here, just kind of getting out-jungled, out-pressured here by Xiao Hao. He has not been good all year long. That continues. Biu actually didn't really do much. It's one of the few series for WE where it feels like Bilibili was just kind of an afterthought. And then Shanks and Jing, like I said, had some moments in game 1, but certainly weren't consistent throughout. Outlook-wise for these two teams, WE's bad. Like, they're 0-9. Like, I don't really know what to tell you. They do look a little bit better, I think, with Jing and Kadaya than they did before they put them in, but at the same time, they're not a good team. They're still the worst team in the LPL as far as I'm concerned. Getting 2-0'd here doesn't really change that too much for me. And then Anyone's Legend continues their hot streak. I still don't know how for real this team is. If you see my power rankings over the past few weeks, I have a tough time putting them above a slot like 8 or 9 in the power rankings just because it's really difficult for me to imagine a world where they are going to be better than a team like LNG or EDG, even if they really are, and they really are playing better than those teams right now, because you could argue that they have been more consistent than teams like LNG and EDG. So theoretically, you know, more wins, more big-time wins, which they've shown they are able to get, and maybe I'll start taking this Anyone's Legends team serious as an actual LPL, like, potentially, like, Worlds, you know, contender. Like, that would be insane, right? Like, if this team made it to Worlds, but we live in a world where it's technically going to be a possibility with them for sure making playoffs, and I'm excited to see it. Moving on to our second series here of day 1, we had Invictus Gaming taking on JD Gaming. A 2-1 series win for JDG. They're going to be happy that they pulled this out. However, you know, going to 3 games with IG isn't exactly what you wanted to see from this team. But, you know, pulling out the win, after all, it's a positive. It's what you want to see. And it was, you know, games 1 and 3 were at least good, I think, for JDG. Especially game 3 towards the end there. I really liked it. Game 1 was a relatively strong JDG game. I would say that they looked good throughout most of it. It was really off the back of Kanavi just being better than June, which is going to happen. Kanavi's the best pathing jungler, or one of the best pathing junglers in the world. You know, very close to up there. I'm going to say that, and someone's going to get real mad at me in the comment section, but whatever. Kanavi had a really good one. In game 1 on the Viego, was just able to take over the entire map, was able to control a lot of the pacing that went on, and was able to get Hope a lot of gold on the Aphelios for him to just end the game. In game 2, Invictus Gaming actually were able to take it off of some really interesting late game fights here with June, who had a good bounce back game here on the Wukong, able to create a lot. Mole had a pretty good game here on the Ahri, and then so did on the Jinx. Eventually, we got to that point. Really, it was just a team effort and team fighting late game for Invictus that was able to get them that win here. And then game 3 was more so JDG just from the get-go, really just being the better team. Even with June being able to get some gold here on the Nidalee, it was Kanavi being able to spread the wealth, most specifically to Hope, who had a phenomenal game on the Callista. And JDG's able to take the series in 3. Hope is going to get my player of the series here. He was really, really solid for JDG, as he has continued to be all year long. Ever since he has joined the lineup, this team has taken a completely different path up to the top. And I'm happy to see it. I'm happy to say that it's happening as well. So that's awesome. Kanavi has another good series here. A lot of people really were against my opinion of having him as the #1 jungler in the LPL, but I do think consistency-wise, even if he still has to prove it a little bit more when people actually stop his game plan, he so often just gets ahead of his opponents and so often is just able to control what a lot of them are capable of doing. And I think that is such a boon to have for this team. 369 continues to be good. He was less good in this one. Not that he was bad, just wasn't as influential, you know, on the Ornn. It's still an important game. You still have to have that frontline tank, but not the damage dealer in this one. And Yagao, I thought, had his ups and downs, definitely had his downs, I think, in game 2 here. But in game 3, I actually really liked how Yagao plays Taliyah. I think he continues to be one of the more interesting Taliyah players in the world. Using that Taliyah ult to block off On from the fight in game 3, I think was really, really cool. Nobody really uses Taliyah quite like, there are like 4 or 5 players in the world that I think really use Taliyah to her full potential, and I think Yagao feels like one of them. And I know you can shit on Yagao all you want, but I really do think he's having arguably the best season of his entire career right now. So, yeah, JDG just looking good. As for IG, they continue to look not as good, even when they do have good performances, because they do. They have good players, and those players can step up. Mostly June. I've talked about it all year long. June feels pretty hella trapped here on this Invictus Gaming team, with a shitty bot lane and a mid laner who just doesn't play super aggressively, whether that be Uakai before him or Mole now. Both just are kind of meh players in terms of how they play. terms of being aggressive. Jun had a really good game too. He was the biggest reason why this team was able to take a game off of JDG, and he actually had a really good start to game 3. Unfortunately, on the Nidalee, it's just really hard to transition that into anything, especially when you're playing something like Nidalee Renekton, and Renekton's not like Giga Fed. I can see where that is a world where it's really difficult to actually transition any Nidalee gold into anything. This Renekton did nothing in game 3. Shout out Zika. He just sometimes doesn't do anything. But yeah, for Invictus Gaming, it really is just Jun versus the world. It's good to see you have a player like that. I don't imagine they'll be able to hold on to him if he wants to leave, just because like they suck. Like they're not good. They don't really have a lot of talent like in the system that I would expect to be able to come through and like help. Like obviously I like Uakai, or I liked Uakai. Zika had potential. You have someone like Ke in the LDL who's doing a good job at support, but you obviously don't want to take Wink out of the lineup for whatever reason. Wink continues to be a problem for this team. He's going to get my dud of the series. He continues to not really understand roam timers. He continues to not really understand when to not go in and when to not just die instantly. Him on aggressive supports here, I just think isn't the play. He is much better, in my opinion, on Enchanters, and he's continued to be better on Enchanters, but you know, I guess what do I know? He won his only game here on Leona, so yeah, I just don't know. I don't know. Wink is just, he's not very good. Like, there's really nothing else to say. Like, I think On has actually shown a little bit of promise, or at least a little bit of an ability to, you know, do something with gold, even if he has trouble getting that gold himself. I don't see a reason to keep playing him. I've harped on this a lot over the past few weeks. I'm not going to keep harping on it. Wink is just kind of a mediocre player that I don't assume will be in the lineup for much longer. But outlook-wise for these two teams, Invictus Gaming is fine. They're not good. They're a bottom-tier team, and they're not going to be making a playoff push, whatever. JDG, obviously you would want a more emphatic victory, I think, here than what you got against Invictus Gaming after all. But at the end of the day, a win's a win. Kanavi and Hope are still playing really well. Even if 369 and Yigao had a little bit of a down series here, I still think that this team is really, really good, and I expect to see them, you know, at the top of the LPL power rankings and standings up until playoff time. Moving on to day 2 now, and we kicked off day 2 with a matchup between ThunderTalk Gaming and OMG, oh my god. And TT actually picks up the win here, 2-1. A very interesting series as ThunderTalk continues, I think, to surprise a lot of people with their new roster actually being relatively competent and actually potentially, maybe not record-wise, but a playoff potential. They're playing like it right now at the very least, and it's really interesting to watch. So let's talk about what ThunderTalk did well. Game 1 was a TT win off of the back of Ucal on Azir. Ucal has really stepped up his game in the past few weeks. He was really, really garbage at the beginning of Summer Split. You finally start getting some more consistent performances, I'll say, out of the rest of your team here. Hoya comes into the top lane. Obviously, you have the bot lane switching out. Yao Yao coming in full-time at support. Puff and Kepler kind of splitting time here, but Kepler playing a lot more. Ucal has really stepped up his game, I think, with this new roster, and he looked really good in Game 1 here. Even though Game 2 was a pretty big win here for OMG off of the back of Shanji's, like, weird Lilia pick. In the top lane, really love Lilia top. I think it can really be oppressive, especially to someone like Gwen. And it very much was. It was very difficult for Hoya to deal with in that matchup. And Shanji did a really good job, but so did Abel, so did Cream. And then in Game 3, it was really just all this ThunderTalk bot lane. You take Puff out, you put Kepler in, who I do think is an upgrade to Puff right now. Kepler and Yao Yao just seem like the bot lane of the future for ThunderTalk here. And they dominate. They do really well into Abel and Jerry here, who have been a pretty consistently okay bot lane for most of the year, especially Abel, who's really been able to carry some games here. Yao Yao does get the player of the series for me here. He was really good in Game 1 on the Braum, being able to keep the Azir alive and being able to do a lot of roaming here with Beishuan on the Viego. And then in Game 3, he was the focal point for this roster. Every single play they made on the map was made around the Rakan, whether it be with the Sylas, whether it be with the Viego, whether it be with the Jinx. They were making everything around this Rakan's plays, and it really just shows how important Yao Yao has been to this team ever since he joined. I could argue that he is the most important member of ThunderTalk, and he has been probably the best member all year long, and he's only played, what, like 4 or 5 series? Maybe not even that up until this point, but yeah. ThunderTalk looks like a completely new team. Like I said, Yao and Yukao really doing a lot of the heavy lifting in this series, but Kepler, I think, also had a really good one game here on the Jinx in Game 3. He definitely looks like the upgrade here to Puff and Southwind down in the bottom lane here. Their time is just done. Like, they have not been a competent, even remotely good, like, average, even LPL bot lane for, I want to say, until their first split on IG. I think it was probably the last time they were even remotely on that level. Now you have Kepler and Yao coming in, and they have really proven to be upgrades. Kepler, somebody who we've seen in the past on the LPL stage not really be up to snuff, but you put some better teammates around him, you don't give him the absolute trash that he had on Victory 5 here, and you see him actually be able to perform. Yao, I think, has helped him a lot as well. Like I said, I think he's really good. Hoya's come in and been a little bit more in the top lane than I think they had before. And Beishuan, I thought, was always a little bit elo stuck on this ThunderTalk team, even when they were losing. I always thought he looked like a pretty good player, so TT finally starting to figure it out. As for OMG, not what you wanted to see out of a team that I think has really started to ramp up and started to beat a lot of the playoff teams recently. I know a lot of people are saying they took this series easy and maybe they took it off. I don't think so. It really just looked like they got a little bit outplayed here today. Mostly Cream in the mid lane, who was a little bit of a problem for this OMG team. He's going to get my dud of the series here. Everyone on this channel knows that I'm a huge fan of Cream, but he did not have it here today. An abysmal game 1 here on the Sylas, and then a pretty bad game 3 here on the Akali. 2 picks that I think Cream has shown, especially the Akali here, that he is very proficient on. So very unfortunate to see 2 really bad games from Cream, although he wasn't the only one who played badly in this series. Like I said, Abel and Jerry just kind of got outplayed, especially in that game 3 once Kepler came in. It really was not that close in the bottom lane. Yao was just kind of all over the map, and they weren't really able to stop him. So, OMG just kind of being meh. I will say the bright spot here for OMG is definitely Shanji in the top lane, who, again, had a really good game on the Lilia here in Game 2. But he was also relatively competent on the Gangplank in Game 3, even when everything around him was going to shit. So, Shanji continues to kind of be a little bit of a bright spot for OMG. He continues to grow, but, you know, this is a team with playoff aspirations. And outlook-wise now, if we're talking about playoff aspirations, you can't really be losing to ThunderTalk. Like, this is not a loss you can really be suffering as OMG if you want to push into that top 10. For TT, this is a huge win. This is an absolutely ginormous win. I don't know if they're just too far out of it at this point to really be truly considered for playoffs, but, like, this team is actually kind of good. And beating OMG here kind of shows that. I'm not exactly sure that I'm going to sit here and say that they're, like, definitely better than OMG or anything like that, but at the end of the day, they did beat them pretty convincingly, and this really could be like a top 10 to 12 team in the region if they continue to play like this. Jumping into our second series here of day 2, we had LNG Esports taking on Ultra Prime and a rare 2-0 clean win from LNG. I'm a little bit surprised, but at the same time, I'm excited, and I'm happy to have seen that this can exist. I get it, it's against Ultra Prime, who definitely have their problems, but at the end of the day, a win for LNG is a win for LNG, so, I mean, congrats to this roster, but holy shit, I'm shocked that it's happening here. They looked good. They really did, both in Games 1 and in Games 2. Why did I say games plural? Both in Game 1 and 2, they looked good here, especially Light here, who I really thought had one of his better series in quite a while. He's actually been relatively meh for this team for a little while here. But you put Lumao back in here over Iwandi. Pandasy, by the way, still in the top lane here. I'm not really sure what's going on with LA. Not sure if it's some sort of internal decision. I don't think there are a lot of people on the planet that would tell you that Pandasy gives you a better chance to win than Ale. But whatever the reasoning, obviously, Light and Lumao are the bot lane in right now. And honestly, Light just looks so much better whenever Lumao plays than when Iwandi plays. I'm not really sure if that's an Iwandi thing or if it's just Light and Lumao have really good chemistry together. But the truth of the matter is that Light looks a lot better when Lumao is in. And we saw that in this series. I think Lumao just plays a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more of the way that Light wants to play. And I think that really shows up for him in his actual gameplay. He wasn't the only member of the team to actually play well, though, here. For me, obviously, Light and Lumao played well, but Doenby had a really good series. He's been up and down, I think, a lot of the season. A lot of their wins have come because of him. But also a lot of their losses have come because of Doenby. He's really kind of been the focal point of LNG, whether good or bad. And he was good, again, in this series. He had a really good game 1 here on the Sylas, an impactful game 2 on the Lissandra. Kind of getting back to his roots a little bit here of his playstyle. I really like him on the Lissandra. It's a pick that I expect to see more. Him linking up with Tarzan and making sure that this bot lane just has as much pressure as they absolutely can have. Obviously, Doanby is kind of a pressure magnet when it comes to both sides of the game because his team wants to play through him and wants to protect him because that's what Doanby does. But his team, the enemy team, also wants to focus a lot on him. That can open a lot up for the team around him, and it absolutely did in this when it opened up Light and Loom out to be able to just win bot lane. So overall, really good series from LNG, mostly just due to the bottom 3 members of their team playing really, really well. As for Ultra Prime, they continue to just be kind of average at best. This bot lane continues to disappoint. I still think Elk is a really good player, even if he's not showing it right now. I think you put him on a better team, he still looks good. Xiaoxi has been a gigantic problem for this roster, but both Xiaoxi and Elk did not have a good series here. Xiaoxi's going to get my dud of the series, although if you wanted to give it to Elk, I would totally understand. But for me, Xiaoxi was significantly worse, especially in that game 1 on the Renata, where he was just really bad. Like, there's really no other way to put it. I thought Cryan had some moments, but at the end of the day, he still looked pretty bad. Was just outplayed, out-macroed a lot here by Doanby, which we've seen. And then Hacker's just not on the same level as Tarzan. Like, he's not even remotely. Even if he did have a pretty good game, too, here on the Viego, it really amounted to absolutely nothing. Like, you know, he doesn't, just because he has a good scoreline doesn't mean he actually played well, is I think what I'll say here for Hacker. Outlook-wise, for Ultra Prime, they're not a very good team. They're, you know, probably, like I always say, at the top or, like, near the middle of, like, this clump of bad teams, you know? They're not a playoff team. They're closer to WE than they are to OMG, in my opinion. And, but at the same time, you know, I still think they're probably a little more consistent, a little bit better than, say, like, WE or Invictus Gaming or a team like that. Not to say that they're good, just, you know, maybe they're not just awful. They at least showed something here. As for LNG, like, this is exactly what you wanted to see. A dominant win against a bad team. You need this team's confidence to get back on track because really, the momentum that they had, you know, whatever they had momentum-wise out of spring was obliterated throughout most of summer so far. And so they need to regain that. They've got a tough schedule coming up for the rest of the year, as you always do in the LPL. There aren't really a lot of easy games in the LPL, but this is a team that I really do think can get back on track. I don't know if we're going to see Pandasy all season. I would expect to see Lumao a lot more if he's going to play like this, but LNG just needs to figure out what they're doing and move forward with it so that hopefully we can see a more confident, more cohesive, more decisive LNG roster. Jumping into the third day here of Week 7 LPL action, we kicked off Day 3 with a series between Top Esports and Rare Atom. And Top Esports pick up another 2-0 win here, another series win here. That is 10-1 on the season for Top Esports. Pretty good for a team that started the season 0-1, huh? 10-0 in your past 10 will feel pretty good, I think. And they continue to just look phenomenal. I mean, they continue to look like the best team in the LPL, if we're being honest. But Game 1 here was really a bloodbath. Both Knight and Jackie Love kind of getting in on a lot of the action here. Jackie Love gets his signature Draven pick and is able to pop off on it going up against iBoy and Uyanja. You know, a bot lane who I think has been relatively better in recent weeks, but, you know, still hasn't been one of the better bot lanes in the league by any stretch of the imagination. And then Knight here, 2 games of Sylas. How do you allow Knight to get Sylas not once, but twice? It's his best pick, and he proves it every single time, and he absolutely dominates Strive in this series. It is really not even remotely close. You could give player of the series here, I think, to either Knight or Jackie Love. Both deserve it. And honestly, you know, big shout out to Mark. Mark had a phenomenal game 2 here on the Leona. Even the game 1 on Amumu was still pretty good, but the game 2 on Leona was really, really great here for Mark. But honestly, like, that just feels like, I'm not saying it's a symptom. I'm not trying to take away Mark's accomplishments, but this TES team just can't do wrong. Like, this team just can't do wrong right now. They did not really need Tion and Wayward, who have been 2 of their bigger pieces all year long, to really dominate a Rare Atom team in this series that, don't forget, made playoffs last split. I know they've been awful this split so far, and I know that they're not very good right now, but this is still a team that made playoffs last split. So, yeah, Jackie Love is going to get my player of the series for that Draven game, and then in game 2, he played that Ezreal really, it was a really good game. Really fun game of Ezreal here. A really good game from Knight as well on the Sylas. What a shocker. Mark, like I said, on Leona. Just a really good series overall from TES, and it's really good to see. I want to say them get more consistent because TES's problem has always just been the fluctuations that this team is capable of doing. Tion, Jackie Love, Mark, like these are all players that I think can go on streaks of just being bad and can, maybe not bad, but just of trying too hard to win games without, you know, proper planning ahead of time, and making a lot of mistakes because of it. But right now, this team really just looks to be firing on all cylinders. They can't really do anything wrong on the map, and it's really, really fun to watch. As for Rare Atom, they definitely have some problems. Like, they're not so good. Strive got obliterated in this series. One of the worst series I've ever seen Strive play here. He's clearly the dud of the series. He was awful for Rare Atom. Just a huge negative for them the entire series. Leon really did get out jungled here by Tion, even when Tion wasn't, like, super far ahead. Obviously, he had a good game, too, here on the Viego, but I don't know. The Vi game just wasn't, like, ridiculously impressive to me when it came to Tion. And Leon still couldn't have any sort of map pressure at all. You could argue that Cube did all right here in the top lane, but it's two matchups that Cube should win here. The Tryndamere into Gnar is super Tryndamere favored, and then the Vladimir into Gwen I think can be relatively Vladimir favored. So Cube did fine, but really it's not. I mean, who cared? Like at the end of the day, it didn't matter, right? Like Wayward still got ahead in game 2 and was able to do a lot in team fights. So. And then Aiboy and Yuyanja just weren't as good as Jackie Love and Mark. They were never going to be as good as Jackie Love and Mark, especially if they're going to play like this. So, not really too much to say about Rare Atom. Just not as good of a team. Really, Strive got obliterated. Everybody else just kind of slowly lost. And that's really what it was for Rare Atom. Outlook-wise for these two teams, Rare Atom sucks. I don't really want to go into them. I want to go into TES because this team really has the potential to be the best team in the world. And I think you could make a real argument that right now they are the best team in the world. I don't know if I'm willing to make that argument. Obviously, there are a lot of really, really good teams in the world right now. But for me, there's a reason that they became number 1 in my LPL power rankings last week. It's because the consistency of this team has changed dramatically. They have started to pick up these wins and not drop random games against bad teams like they used to. It really just feels like this TES team is turning a new leaf. That does scare me on one hand, though, because every time you feel like this TES team is getting closer and closer to being, you know, that world finals contender that they deserve to be, they always figure out some way to ruin it. So hopefully they don't figure out some way to ruin it this time, because this team is just too fun and too amazing to watch to, you know, have them just choke it away on the world stage at the end of the day. Jumping into our second series here of day 3, we had a matchup I think a lot of people were excited to watch, and that was Bilibili Gaming taking on RNG. RNG picking up the 2-0 series win here, as they should. BLG continues their fall from grace. Even after a relatively good week last week, I believe they went 2-0 last week. Certainly not going to do that again this week, but a difficult schedule, a difficult draw here against RNG, who have been a little bit better as of recent. Xiaohu, I thought, was really, really good in this series. I think a lot of people are going to be talking about Gala's scoreline here. And yeah, Gala's scoreline looks great, but I'm not really sure a lot of those leads were generated entirely by Gala. I want to give a huge shout out to both Wei and Xiaohu for how well they played in this series. Xiaohu is going to get my player of the series here. He was really, really phenomenal. That Victor game in game 1 was awesome, but it was even better on the Taliyah in game 2, where he was really just taking over the map. Like I said, there are very few, I should say, Taliyah players in the world that really play it, like, masterfully, like, can really just, like, take over the game at a pro level on them. And Xiaohu is one of them. As we've seen in this game, too, he was really, really great. Really, really, really on the map. Just, like, taking over, cutting people off, getting picks, you know, creating boundaries in team fights. Like, what, you know, just even for the mobility, like, What does Xiaohu not do with this ult? I don't know. So, really, really good series and game from Xiaohu overall. Wei was really good on the Poppy, especially in that game 1, where he was just creating advantage after advantage after advantage, not only for Xiaohu in the mid lane, but also for Gala in the bot lane, just creating so much across the map. It was two really good games of Poppy for Wei. I actually really like the Poppy pick into Wukong in general. I've talked about that so much on this channel, but that matchup in particular, I think is really, really Poppy favored, and I'm happy to see RNG go to that here. And Gala and Ming, yes, did play well. I will say, a lot of their leads weren't necessarily generated by themselves. They were more so generated by the team. That's not to take away from what Gala and Ming were doing and how well they were playing. It's just to say that more, you know, they weren't the focal point this game, and they didn't have to be. You know, that's how good this RNG team is. Breathe had some really good laning phases in the top lane, kind of obliterated Bin in game 2 here, which we will get to, but yeah, RNG just looking real good. As for BLG, I mean, this team is what it is at this point, right? Like, I'm kind of done waiting for this team to turn it around. Ben was kind of the hard carry for this team last week. He was a big reason they were able to win both of their series last week, and in this one, he just wasn't very good. He's going to get my dud of the series, really make him look like the Ben Breathe swap was definitely Breathe favored for RNG. But yeah, he was not so good, especially in Game 2 here on the Gangplank, where I thought he had a lot of trouble. In Game 1, he was alright on the Gwen, although he was inting a little bit towards the end of the game there. But Game 2 was just not good from him on the Gangplank. Khan in the jungle continues to be fine. Like, okay, he's alright. Got completely out-jungled by Wei here in a matchup that I think is a little bit difficult to win if the Poppy knows how to play it. So I'm not going to blame him too much. They still can't figure out whether or not they want to play Fofo or Icon. They're the same player right now. Like, neither of them are good, so it doesn't really matter. And Rise has come in and been fine. Like, him and Crisp, I think, have relatively okay synergy. They're never going to be able to match up against Gala and Ming, one of the best bot lanes in the world, but, you know, they're fine. They're fine. So, outlook-wise for BLG, they are who we thought they were, which is, like, I don't know, like, maybe an 11 to 13 kind of team. You know, like, probably in the same range as other teams like OMG, like ThunderTalk, as we just talked about. Like, they're probably somewhere around there. I don't have a lot of confidence that this team is going to be pushing for a playoff spot, but at the end of the day, you never know what could really happen. So, if BLG did end up making playoffs, I mean, good for them. But right now, especially after a loss like this, it just doesn't feel super plausible. As for RNG, they continue to kind of get back on track, I think, a little bit. They had some ups and downs the past few weeks. Definitely some losses that they really shouldn't have. A lot of people are talking about them as one of the more consistent teams in the LPL. I really couldn't see it any more different than that. They've been very inconsistent so far in summer, dropping games to teams they absolutely shouldn't be, dropping series just overall. Really, I definitely don't think they've been the pinnacle of consistency for the LPL, but hopefully they can get a win here and kind of get back on track there. This was a nice one, and I think they're going to be happy about getting it, especially because it very much felt like a team effort. Moving on to Day 4 action now, and jumping into Day 4, we kick that off with a 3-game set here between FunPlus Phoenix and Anyone's Legend, a battle of two teams that I think are relatively in similar spots right now in terms of how they're playing. Maybe not in terms of record, but FPX actually comes out in favor of a 2-1 series win here, continuing to look like a much different team than anything they were at the beginning of the year. That Summit Edition has really changed a lot. But yeah, FPX looks great. They take Game 1 here, they take Game 3. They look really, really solid against an Anyone's Legend team that I think, you know, is good. Like, we can't pretend that this team isn't, you know, at least pretty good. They're a playoff team, and so for FPX to come out and get a pretty solid win here, I think looks good on the resume. My player of the series here, and the player I really want to talk about, is going to be Care in the mid lane for FPX, who I think has definitely been up and down for FPX so far this season. I think if you had asked me before this season, or before this series, who their worst player was, their weak link, quote unquote, I would have told you Care in the mid lane. But he had two really interesting games here. Game 1 was pretty interesting here on the Victor. Game 3, though, was phenomenal, like genuinely phenomenal on the Ahri. One of the best Ahri games that I've seen all year long. A great game here from Care. And so that's going to earn him my player of the series. He was really great. Summit was also really solid in this one, even if he hasn't been the direct carry, I think, for a lot of what FPX is doing. He enables a lot by just simply not being a huge negative in the top lane here. And he was really good in Game 1. He got obliterated in Game 2, which we'll get to, but he was really good in Game 1. LWX and Hank continue to be hyper consistent, especially towards the late game. You don't have to pick them on these like super hyper carry bot lane types. Although you did in Game 1 here on the Lucian Nami, you know, you wanted to give him a lot of pressure, and they did well with it, although Summit was kind of the big carry for that team in the late game. And then in Game 3, you just give them the Sivir Yumi. You just say, like, screw it. Like, we're going to give them a super sustainable lane where they can just kind of be by themselves. They're into an Ezreal. We're not going to have to worry too much about them, and they're going to be relevant late game, and they absolutely were. Very, very good from them. Clid continues to be really good, especially on Lee Sin. You know, one of his best champions, even if that champion, I think, is relatively weak in the meta right now. We're continuing to see a lot of him getting played at a high level just because, you know, people are really good at him, and Clid's a good example of that here. But overall, FPX continues to just grow and get better, and I think a lot of that just has to do with the fact that I think their solo laners are really developing into carries of their own, not just conduits through which Clid can have a really good game, or LWX and Hank can kind of finish it off in the late game. So really, really good from FPX on that regard. Anyone's Legend, on the other hand, kind kind of a rough loss here. Not the worst loss in the world. Obviously, losing to FPX sucks, but it's not the worst thing in the world. They're a decent team. I've had them pretty high in my power rankings for quite a while now, and so I'm not going to pretend like I was shocked by this outcome by any stretch of the imagination, but unfortunately, they were just a little outclassed here. Like, this is kind of the limit, I think, of where anyone's legend is probably going to be punching up this season. I don't think they're going to be hitting a lot of teams that are FPX caliber and above. I just don't think the talent level is quite there. They are able to take game 2 in a relatively good fashion off the back of ZDZ's Camille, which absolutely obliterated Summit in laning phase and was just able to take over the entire map. Able to side lane, able to team fight, really do whatever you want. Not the only player in the game who played well here. Xiao Hao had a really good one on Wukong. Forge had a good one on Akali. And then Betty and Chocho were fine in the bottom lane. Overall, it was just the other games that were a little bit concerning to me. Mostly, in my opinion, I don't know, the game 3, which I think was very bad to watch. Like, it was very much a demolition. Xiao Hao just got completely out-pressured by Clid on the Lee Sin. Yes, I get that Clid is a Lee Sin master, but at the same time, 3 games of Wukong, Xiao Hao's been really good. You would hope to see a little bit of a better performance from him. And then Chocho, I just thought his engages were not so good throughout pretty much the entirety of the series. You're playing the Alistar Ezreal lane, and you really need to kind of maximize that, and it really just did not happen here in game 3. So he's going to get my dud of the series. Chocho was, he's been someone who I think, him and Xiao Hao, I think have been, in my opinion, the 2 best players on anyone's legend all year long. But in this one, unfortunately, they couldn't show up against some better competition. I will say, I'm proud of ZDZ. He did have a very good series here. He's someone who I think maybe I've been underrating for quite a while. I've never really seen him as like an upper-level top laner or like a mid-level top laner. He's always just been fine. Someone who's not going to cause you problems. He is someone who I think can win you games, but I don't really think that's going to be his role here on this Anyone's Legend team. It's really hard to invest in that top lane position, generally speaking, right now as well. Just because it's the champions up there typically aren't designed to carry. Camille's not really your meta pick. You really have to be really good at her to be able to win that matchup against Gnar. And, luckily for them, that he is, but I don't know if we'll expect to see that a lot. So, outlook-wise for these 2 teams, I think both of them stay relatively similar, in my opinion. Anyone's Legend with a good win here, but at the end of the day, they're not a better team than FPX, and I didn't expect them to be a better team than FPX. So, at the end of the day, they're probably sitting right about where I thought they were, and similar for FPX, where they're a good team. They're maybe not like one of the best teams in the region. I think they could potentially become one of the best teams in the region. I just don't know if they're going to be there right now. I think the development of Care here in the mid lane, the development of Summit here in the top lane, I think can definitely help towards that. Clid continues to play well. This continues to be one of the more underrated bot lanes in the world. I think that there are a lot of good things going for FPX. Theoretically, they could break in maybe to that top 4 and maybe surprise a lot of people during playoffs or regional qualification or something like that. I just don't know if I would put money on that or if I would say that is the most likely or anything. I really think that this team has problems and has flaws, but they're moving in the right direction, which is always a good sign. Moving on to our second series here of day 4, and it was a matchup between Edward Gaming, EDG, and LGD Gaming. And EDG takes the nice 2-0 series win here. A little bit of a roster update for EDG. It looks like JJ is out, at least for now. Junjia is in. This is an interesting change. I think JJ has been relatively up and down for the EDG team. He's had some really good moments. He's had some not so good moments. And obviously, Junjia is someone that I think a lot of people who have watched the LPL have been really excited to actually see play for quite a long time. Someone who has really dominated the LDL, has really looked good in his opportunities here with EDG. Obviously, we all thought he was going to be the starting jungler on Rare Atom last split, but Leon actually won that rollout, it would seem. He comes back here to EDG, and he's actually getting a shot here to play in a series against, maybe one of the worst teams in the league, kind of show what he has. And he was really good here. He was very, very close to getting my player of the series. He was phenomenal in this one. Not only on the Trundle in game 1, but also on the Poppy in game 2, where he was actually dominant into the Wukong. A great matchup for Poppy. Yes, he was going into a jungler who we'll talk about in a minute as being maybe not so good. But a really good series from Junjia. And a really good series from this bot lane, which continues to just be a piece of mind part of the team for EDG, mostly Viper. Viper just continues to be EDG right now. He continues to just be the heart and soul of this team. And he was really phenomenal in this one. He had a phenomenal Draven game. In game 1, you always love to see Draven, and you love to see it dominate. Draven Blitzcrank is such a fun lane. And then he has to play into the Draven in game 2 as the Aphelios, which is a really tough lane, like a sneakily tough lane to play, and he does really, really well, is able to get ahead, and is able to just kind of end the game because he's better. So Viper's going to get my player of the series. He was really phenomenal. He's been phenomenal for EDG all year long. Even when they have struggled, Viper has been kind of the constant for this EDG team. He is still one of the best AD carries in the world. There is a lot of, and excuse my crassness, I'm sorry if this hurts somebody's feelings. There is a lot of dick riding right now for Fodic and, for, a few other AD carries, Gala. But for me, I'll take Viper over both of them any day of the week. I still think Viper is more consistent, and I trust Viper more, I think, than I trust either of those two. I know that there is going to be a lot of people that, call me crazy for saying that, but at the end of the day, team success is not AD carry success. And so, for me, Viper is still really good, even if his team isn't always showing it. And Scout, I thought, had a pretty good series here, who, talk about a player who's been up and down all year. Scout and Mako have definitely had their ups and downs. Mostly downs, I think, for a lot of summer, but they both looked relatively good in this one. Scout especially, 2 games of Sylas are exactly what you need to break the trend here. Sylas is a really strong pick in the meta right now, and I'm really happy to see Scout able to pull it out and do well on it. But moving over to LGD and what they keep doing, which is just picking 5 random people on their organization and sending them out there. Okay, you want to go with Chilizy in the top lane in this one? Sure. I think we already established that Fearness was better, but sure. Okay, you want to go with Haichao in the mid lane? I think we already established that Yeji was a little bit better, but sure. You have Shadow in there. He doesn't have a great game 1 against Junjie. Let's take him out. Let's put Kui in. Kui looks like the worst jungler we've seen in the LPL in a long time. Not only in this game, but earlier in the season, pretty much all of the games that he's played in, he's been absolutely destroyed. Awesome has lost whatever, secret sauce that he had in the first couple of games when he, came up here to LGD. He has now become a pretty bad player in both this series and in, their last week's series, where he was not so good. Jin Zhao's never been good, but whatever. He's the one member you seemingly don't want to replace, so... yeah, honestly, LGD just doesn't... I don't know what they're doing. They looked okay towards the beginning of the year. Not record-wise, but, performance-wise, they were always close. They would always take a random game off of teams that are better than them and things like that. And then they just kept mixing with the formula, and this team that was supposed to be a bad team has turned into a bad team because ownership and management just can't actually decide on a team of 5 players. And it looks like it's absolutely ruined the cohesion of what this team wants to do. Awesome's my dud of the series here. He was awful into Viper and Mako. Viper just outplayed him at every single aspect, even in the Aphelios Draven matchup, which is super Draven favored. If for Viper to win that, I think is a testament to just how much better he is. But yeah, Awesome has really fallen off a cliff. I really don't like any of the decisions that LGD has made in terms of their roster. I think just continuously pressing this button where it's like, new lineup every single game, what are you going to do? I think only hurts your team in the long run, and I think we've seen that. This team that was relatively competitive early in the year, at least in terms of, they were probably better than, WE and IG and Rare Atom and all these bottom teams. I just can't confidently say that anymore. They've lost whatever edge that they've had, so... Yeah, outlook-wise, LGD has gone back to being one of the bottom 3 teams in the league, and they will probably stay there. They might even get worse as management continues to tinker. EDG, this is a good win. Obviously, it's against a really, really awful team, so it's hard to take too much away from it, but it's a win that you want. Junjie coming in and playing really well is a good sign. I'm not sure if they're going to stick with him for more important games, later in the week or later in the season. That's definitely going to be something that we're going to have to see, but obviously, this is a really hyped prospect, and it'll be interesting to see what they do with that lineup going forward. Jumping into day 5 now of week 7 LPL action. We kicked off day 5 with a matchup between Weibo Gaming and ThunderTalk Gaming. Weibo taking the 2-1 series win here as they continue to look really good after their huge win last week against Victory 5. And they really picked up almost exactly where they left off in terms of team performance as well, because not only is SOFM still struggling, not only is Huanfeng not really doing as much damage as he needs to in these team fights, but the Shy is in God mode right now, and it's really fun to watch. He goes through these little, patches. I don't know, he's kind of like the opposite of Dread. I always talk about Dread in the LCK as a jungler that he'll have these weeks where he's really good, and, he'll have 2-3 weeks in a row where he's really good, and 2-3 weeks in a row where he's really bad. I think the Shy is kind of like that, but right now he's going through one of the good ones, right? is he's been really phenomenal over the past 2 to 3 weeks. He's definitely had his ups and downs this season so far, but a lot of ups, honestly, recently. A very, very good showing here. 2 games of Kennen that I think he looked really, really good on, especially that Game 3, where he was really just taking over the map. It was really difficult for ThunderTalk to actually get a lot done because of how well the Shy was able to kind of squeeze them out from the top lane with a lot of damage and a lot of pressure in team fights. So very, very well done from him. I thought Angel actually had a really underratedly good series here as well. He was phenomenal in Game 1 on the Talia. He was actually very close to getting my player of the series here, except he just had a little bit of a much worse, in my opinion, Game 2 than the Shy did. But his Talia Game 1, even his Silas in Game 3, I thought he had a really good series here. Angel's someone who I definitely think is a little up and down for Weibo, as a lot of their players are. You know, I've talked about being up and down. Huanfeng definitely. SOFM's kind of mostly just been down all year long. We just said it with the Shy. Angel, I think, has been relatively up and down. This was an up for him. This is one of his better series of the year, and that's a really good thing to see, I think, generally speaking, against relatively good competition here in UCal, but Weibo continues to look pretty good. Not phenomenal, because they still definitely have problems, and they definitely put themselves into situations that they shouldn't be in a little bit too often, but at the same time, that's Weibo. That's what they're going to do. It's just, you know, you gotta accept that. As for ThunderTalk, I think they're going to be happy that they were able to take a game here off of Weibo. This is a good Weibo team, and for them to really hold their own, I think, especially in Game 2, where they really did look like the better team off of the back of UCal's Azir, and Yao Yao playing really well here on the Braum as well. I think that there was a lot to like here from ThunderTalk. I just don't think they could get it done fully. Nobody on this team, in my opinion, honestly really deserves done of the series. I don't think there was really somebody in this game that was, like, horrendously bad. I think SOFM honestly made some pretty bad plays, but even then, I still think he made a lot of good ones too, especially in Game 1 here on the Viego. So at the end of the day, it was really, really tough for me to pick a dud of the series. I am going to give it to Hoya, just because he really could not compete with the Shy in the top lane, but it's really not his fault, and he honestly kind of did the best that he could here. He was never really inting. He was more so just not a power point of the map. He was probably the least impactful member of ThunderTalk in this series, so definitely something worth noting there. Definitely not, in my opinion, a huge problem, but, you know, you have to pick a dud of the series here, so for me, it's going to go to Hoya. But like I said, UCal was a big reason they were able to win that game in Game 2. I continue to say that Kepler and Yao Yao are a huge upgrade to Puff and Southwind here in the south lane. What am I talking about? In the bot lane for ThunderTalk. They continue to look a lot better, I think. Even in their losses, Yao Yao, it can be really difficult to play a Mumu on a comp that's losing, but he still looks pretty competent on it. He was still making some decent engages. They just didn't have the damage to follow up. So, yeah, Kepler and Yao Yao I expect to see for the rest of the season. They continue to look like a positive, and then UCal was a big positive, especially in that Game 2 for them, even if he was kind of a pretty big negative in Game 3 on the Swain. But outlook-wise for these two teams, I don't think this really changes much for either. ThunderTalk continues to look like an okay team. Maybe not a playoff team, but something kind of around there, you know, in that same vein as like an OMG. A team that I think could theoretically make playoffs, but I just don't know if I fully trust them to really do anything with it. And they'll definitely be a one and done if they do make it. As for Weibo, they continue to kind of be this little dark horse team that I think is probably the closest outside of the top 4 to being a Worlds team. Because when they are on, when they can, you know, really push, when the Shy's playing like this, and when Huanfeng and On are playing like this, I really think that this team can kind of beat anybody, and they could really actually make a gauntlet run or make a playoff run, and I wouldn't be hyper surprised. So yeah, I do like this Weibo team. They're stuck at number 5 in the power rankings right now, just because I think top 4 is really hard to break into, but if they keep playing like this, and if they keep playing like they did last week, eventually they're going to force their way into that top 4. Moving on to our second series here of Day 5, which was Victory 5, taking on LNG Esports. 2-0 series win here for V5. They are going to take this. I know it's not the most clean series of all time, but they certainly looked pretty good here. A lot of things to note. One, Xiao Bao was in here in the jungle over Karsa. Usually they only play Xiao Bao, I think, for, you know, I don't want to say the lesser games, but the ones that they feel less confident about. But he comes in here, he plays against LNG. Maybe that tells you more about LNG than I need to know, and he looks really, really good. He looks pretty phenomenal. Second off, go look at the player of the game voting and tell me how Fodic got player of the game, both in Game 1 and Game 2, but most especially in Game 1. Like, this is, you know, I don't want to go on a rant here or anything like this, but this is like the example of why I say there is so much proverbial dick riding for a lot of LPL AD carries, because they can play like shit for 50% of the game and have like 3 really cool plays, and they're the best ADC in the world. No question. Perfect positioning, perfect team fighting. Oh, they walked into 4 different Nami bubbles that got them killed? Who cares? They're really cool. And that's how it very much feels like the argument around Fodic has gone recently. There's a reason I'm much lower on him than I think a lot of other people are, because, man, like, even in the highlight packages in this one, all of Fodic's highlights are actually Rich's highlights, and it's really funny to watch. So yeah, Rich is my player of the series. He was awesome. He was really, really good here, and so was PP God. Those two were really dominant, I think, for Victory 5 here. Zhao and Bao, I thought, had a lot of pressure, especially in the early game. Even on Xin Zhao, which is a really, really tough ask to play Xin Zhao into Wukong, especially one of the better Wukongs in the world here in Tarzan. And so for Zhao and Bao to look really, really good here, like, he is a world-class jungler. It's really easy to say that. Like, obviously, Karsa is a world-class jungler. They have 2 world-class junglers. They have Karsa, they have Zhao and Bao, both of whom are really, really fantastic. Rich in the top lane has just been so phenomenal at teamfighting. I know Heroes of the Storm is all teamfighting, but obviously that's really what he's carried over, because his Gragas plays, especially in Game 2, were genuinely great. And then you have to shout out PP God, a great game in Game 1 here on the Lulu to allow Fodic to really be able to do all that damage in the late game that he did on Kog'Maw. And then in Game 2 on the Seraphine, setting up so many plays. There were a lot of coordinated, fun things here from Victory 5. The double TP springs to mind from the Gragas Yone. That was really, really fun to watch. Honestly, this Victory 5 team just plays like a unit, and it's really, really entertaining to watch. It's really, really, really good League of Legends. And I get that there are going to be a lot of people out there that want them to be like the best team in the LPL. I think they're very, very close. Obviously, I think them, Top Esports, like JDG, all of them are in that conversation. For me, Victory 5 right now are just a little bit behind Top Esports in terms of like top-end talent. Like, Rookie versus Knight, like, you can do what you want there, but for me, I think the rest of the team just, I would take top first, but that's not to take Victory 5 for granted. They were awesome here. LNG have some problems. It's hard to talk about. Light still looks okay here. He looked like a positive in Game 1. He was just better than Fodic. I think for a majority of Game 1, him and Lumao, I think were just better than V5's bot lane for a lot of Game 1. But Game 2 is a different story. Tarzan got out jungled by Zhao and Bao. That's good. That's good for Zhao and Bao. It's bad for LNG. Tarzan has not looked like the same jungler ever since Doinb joined this team. The jungle mid synergy I've talked about in previous videos is so important, especially in the meta right now, and these two just do not have that, even if they're good players separately. And then Pandasy in the top lane is a problem. Like, he is a problem. He has been one of the worst players in the LPL. He ran it down in Game 1 on the Gwen. He had absolutely no impact on the Ornn in Game 2. Just 2 really, really bad games from him. I really have no idea what Ale must have done to get benched here on LNG, but Pandasy is certainly not the answer. You have to have somebody else here that is going to play. Ale is obviously better than this, so I don't know what the reason is that Ale isn't playing, but, if Ale can't play, like, if there's some huge behind-the-scenes drama and they all hate each other and whatever, right? Like, if Ale can't play, then you've got to find somebody that isn't Pandasy, because he cannot play either. So, yeah, outlook-wise for LNG, they continue to be the exact team that we thought they were going into this week, which is a not super competitive, like, lower-tier playoff team, which is probably what they're going to be. They're probably going to be a first or a second round out in the playoffs that just disappoints, which is not what this team wanted. Obviously, signing Doinb in the offseason and, bringing in Lumao and hoping to build off of Tarzan and Light. You would hope that you weren't this, but that's just what you got. For Victory 5, they're one of the best teams in the world, and they will continue to be one of the best teams in the world, even with their, 6-man roster, or even 7-man roster if you want to count Dream, like, being really phenomenal. Like, this is just, they're a really, really solid team. I just hope that the players really start to get the credit they deserve. Rich, PP God, these are the superstars of this team this year so far, and I really want to see them really get the credit that they deserve in the end here. Moving on to our LPL Week 7 Super Day, which was Day 6. Our 3 Series Day was kicked off with a battle of the least between Team WE and Invictus Gaming. The two teams at the bottom of the standings, and Invictus Gaming actually gets the 2-1 series win here. Both of these teams going to be very happy to even take a game, just generally speaking, because they haven't done it in a while. But Invictus Gaming is going to be very happy to take a series win here. Only their second series win of the split. Some interesting things here. We'll talk about IG first. Usually when this team wins, it's off the back of Jun just being better, but Jun was fine in this series. He didn't have a lot of ups, he didn't have a lot of downs. He honestly really wasn't that big of a factor for IG. It was really off of the back of Mole in the mid lane being pretty good. Obviously going into GA, who hasn't played all year long, and, you know, not Shanks, who has been WE's arguably their best player for quite a while now. So Mole comes in and he's fine. He looks good here. He looks really good in their wins. Not so great in their losses, but nobody really looked great in their loss in game 2. Honestly, I'm going to say it. This bot lane looked alright. This bot lane looked pretty okay. Not great. Wink had a really good game 1 on the Blitzcrank, but I attribute a lot of that to just like, man, like how many hooks can you walk into? You know what I mean? It was really kind of funny to watch. And then eventually they put Kadaya back in at support for WE, and WE's bot lane starts to look a lot better. IG's bot lane starts to get outscaled again. I really do think that they might be the worst bot lane in the league because even Jing and Kadaya were beating them. But yeah, still, shout out Mole. You were able to get that game 1 and that game 3, and you were able to win the series. So congrats. On played really well in game 1 on the Draven after all those picks from Wink's Blitzcrank, so that's good. But, you know, shout out. IG winning a game, it's hard to talk high on them too much because even in their wins, they didn't look particularly unbelievable. Zika and Jun were fine. They didn't do anything necessarily wrong, but they weren't, you know, necessarily the reasons they won. So there you go. IG wins the series. Great. As for WE, I don't get it. Not only are you facing the worst team other than you in the league, but you take out your only good player for this series, for your one of the only winnable series I think you're going to have all year long. You take out your only good player in Shanks in the mid lane. You put GA in. GA gets completely run over by Mole. He's going to get done of the series. He walked into 45 Blitzcrank hooks. And then in game 3, his Ahri just got obliterated globally by Talia. And you can't do anything. You do have Jing and Kadaya, who, honestly, shout out. They had really good games 2 and 3. They were probably the 2 best players in the series. Like, I mean that in the most sincere way possible. Jing is kind of my player of the series here. I can't give him player of the series because his team got clapped. But at the end of the day, Jing was the best player across these 2 teams, in my opinion, in this series. You know, Mole was fine, but Jing was actually pretty good, and Jing and Kadaya continue to look like an upgrade to the bottom lane here, and if they can beat On and Wink, then they're not the worst bot lane in the league, which means they're an upgrade to what SMLZ and Heal were giving you. So, shout out. I hope they continue with that. View comes in. He's kind of the same problem that Beishong had of just sometimes he's in the wrong position and just will die, and sometimes it just feels like he's not looking at his minimap, but at the same time, like, I understand wanting to play View over Beishong. Like, I get that. View continues to just not be very good. This WE team isn't very good. Outlook-wise, these are the 2 worst teams in the league. Like, I really have a hard time, even after this series, like, separating them too much. Obviously, Invictus is the better team, because they at least have, like, not major problems, like, major, I'm gonna lose the game no matter what problems, but they're not that good. They're not good. They're the second worst team in the league. And WE is the worst team in the league. Yes, they have Jing and Kadaya, and that is a bright spot for this team, but at the end of the day, you gotta win a game. Like, eventually, you gotta win something. You gotta win a series for me to not call you the worst team in the league. So yeah, they're the worst team in the league. Hopefully, Shanks comes back in. He's much better than GA, who was awful here. View versus Beishong, whatever you want to do there, I don't really care. I just hope Jing and Kadaya stay in. That's really all I can ask for from WE at this point. Moving on to the second series here of day 6. We had a 3-game set here between JD Gaming and Bilibili Gaming that very much went in the favor of JDG, as a lot expected. This team continues their kind of amazing run here in summer so far. I think a lot of people knew they were good, but I don't know if a lot of people knew they were this good. And yeah, they're playing against BLG, so whatever. Like, take it with a grain of salt. But a win's a win. Winning is winning, and they are winning right now, which is good to see. Kanavi's going to get my player of the series here. He was genuinely phenomenal, not only in Game 1, but in Game 3 as well. You could argue that he is the most impactful jungler to his team's success in the world. I really think, obviously you can say that there are better junglers in the world. Like, you could say Canyon's better, you could say Peanut's better, but like, I don't know if there's a jungler in the world that means more to their team than Kanavi means to JDG. Their wins just often come off the back of Kanavi doing really, really good things in the jungle all the time. So, yeah, I mean, shout out to Kanavi. He continues to be awesome. Hope has another pretty good series here. But mostly, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at Kanavi and I'm saying, yeah, that's the guy. Like, that is the guy for JDG. Missing continues to be a little bit underrated, I think, here on JDG. He continues to be one of the best supports in the league and in the world, and he has been for quite a while. He was last year on WE as well. Obviously, bringing him in here and having Hope and Missing kind of pair up together, I think has been a huge boon for this JDG team, and has definitely been a recent reason why I think this team has really sparked something in the last few months. And then 369 and Yigao continue to have some of the best seasons of their career. So JDG continues to roll. BLG actually wins a game here, which I think they're going to be happy about, off the back of Ryze's Sivir, which I thought was pretty good here. Crisp had a decent game on the Yuumi, but whatever, it's Yuumi, who cares? Icon got subbed in here, or I guess Icon started the series, and he played the whole series. Holy shit. Sorry, I'm so used to Icon and Fofo splitting time that to see Icon getting the full series here, I think is unbelievable. He plays his signature Prowler's Claw Renekton in Game 1, and it does absolutely nothing. He looks awful on it. But really, it's Con, I don't really know how to say it. Tell me in the comment section below. I've heard both. It's him that's going to get the dud of the series here. He was just not super good. It's just out-jungled by Kanavi at pretty much every aspect. I think Con has shown signs of being okay here in the jungle, but just nothing ever concrete or consistent here. A lot of performances where he just goes out and is fine. And in this one, when he goes up against one of the best junglers in the world, he very much got punished for it. I'm not expecting him to be on that level, but, maybe not getting absolutely obliterated would be a good start as well. Bin looks mentally checked out here. I imagine he is. This team is pretty much out of playoffs at this point. Not to say they're, like, mathematically eliminated, but they very much feel like they're out of playoffs. They very much feel like they have lost a lot of the luster that they have. Ryze continues to play okay. Not great, but okay. Him and Crisp, I think, have had decent synergy. It's just hard to tell because the rest of the team is such a train wreck that it's hard to know if Ryze and Crisp are actually going to be a duo that you can move on with in the future, but right now it's just hard to take anything away from this BLG team. Outlook-wise, like I said, it's going to be hard to imagine this team making playoffs at this point, but I guess theoretically they're not eliminated yet, so anything is possible. As for JDG, this is one of the best teams in the world. They are going to be fighting for one of those 4 Worlds roster spots right now. It looks pretty comfortable that they're going to be able to get one of those, although I will say out of the top 3 teams, I'm the least confident that they'll be able to maintain this level of play throughout the rest of the season. Kanavi is phenomenal, but we really are seeing the best that we've ever seen out of pretty much everybody else on this roster. Hopefully they can maintain that level of success, but I wouldn't be entirely shocked if they did end up falling off at some point in the rest of the split. But for now, we're going to enjoy it while it lasts. Kanavi, Gao, 369, Hope and Missing have all been really, really good. So hopefully they can maintain it. Obviously, JDG doesn't always have the best track record with that, but maybe this year is different. Who knows? Moving on to the third and final series here of the Super Day and Day 6. As is tradition, this one also went 3 games, which means that I think we're in week 7 here for the 7th week in a row in summer. I think the Super Day in the LPL has had 9 games, and this one was worth it. This one was definitely worth it. Series of the week here goes to Royal Never Give Up RNG taking on Edward Gaming EDG. This is a very deserved series of the week. What a phenomenal Game 3. Games 1 and 2 were a little stompy. I will say, maybe skip those, but everyone go watch Game 3. If you haven't watched Game 3, please go watch Game 3 between these two teams. It was really, really fun to watch. RNG does take the 2-1 series win here, is able to pull out Game 3, even though at the end of Game 3, they didn't even have a gold lead anymore. Like, they never had a gold lead in this game. Not once. Even when they won the game, like when the game hit 0, they did not have a gold lead, which is unbelievable to say, but big shout out to RNG for persevering. Big shout out to EDG for throwing what is probably the biggest gold lead I've seen anyone throw all year long. Genuinely phenomenal from both of these teams. Let's talk about it. RNG kind of dominantly won Game 1 off of the back of Xiaohu's Talia just being really, really solid. And then Game 2, EDG was able to take that pretty much just off the back of everybody playing really well. Mako on the set was really good here, and Viper on the Aphelios continues to be one of the best players in the world. And then you hit game 3, where EDG gets a ridiculous lead off of some bot lane wins here. Draven gets a bunch of cash outs. Viper's having a really good game. Honestly, Scout's having a really good game here on the Silas. Mako's having a good game on the Leona. And EDG looks like they can't possibly lose here with Junjie in. And then everything just goes wrong. I have to talk about the Baron steal. We saw a pretty ludicrous Baron steal in the LEC, which we'll get to in the LEC video later this week, but we saw a pretty ludicrous one there. This one is also pretty much unheard of. This was a Gangplank Ultimate Baron steal, which is disgusting. I mean, shout out Breathe for being able to steal it with GP ult, but at the same time, are you kidding me? You know what I mean? Like, are you kidding me right now? What an unbelievable play by Breathe. A great, great play that ended up really swinging the tide in RNG's favor. Gallo was super far behind for a lot of this game on Aphelios, really wasn't able to do a lot, but the game got to the point where eventually he was able to team fight, and he does really well in that final team fight. For me, player of the series here is going to go to Xiaohu. He was just the most consistent player of RNG, right? Like, you could give it to Breathe, because without that Baron steal, they don't win this game. You could give it to Gala, because he eventually got online, but really, he was super far behind at the beginning. Not all that was his fault, but, I mean, Viper outplayed him for a lot of this series. Xiaohu just looked really, really, really good here, and he's going to get my player of the series. So did Wei. Wei did good things, but he also did some not-so-good things, especially in Game 2. For EDG, man, how do you lose this? Viper had such a phenomenal series here. Viper and Mako both honestly looked world beaters in this series. They looked like the world championship level bot lane and the best bot lane in the world that they were in 2021. I really hope they can maintain that form, because I'd love if they were able to keep this for a long period of time. But, man, like, they should have won that series. For me, the dud of the series is going to go to the jungle position on EDG. JJ played game 1, got absolutely obliterated by Wei in the jungle matchup. Got taken out for Junjie, who had a really good game 2. But then you have to secure that Baron in game 3. And, man, it's just a really tough situation to be in, obviously, because I can't imagine there's a much more stressful thing in the late game than a 50-50 here, but for Gangplank ult to get it, I think it's just about as disastrous as it gets. Smiting at 1,000 is just so unfortunate, but yeah, it is what it is. Honestly, a very, very fun series here, outlook-wise. EDG's going to be happy. They should have beaten RNG in this series. They were the better team, and I think, honestly, this week they looked pretty freaking good. I think Junjie honestly makes this team a better team, or at least he looks like he does right now. I would expect to see a lot more of him in the future, but yeah, EDG should be walking away from this week with the 2-0 series win, having just beaten RNG, but RNG is able to sneak out of this. They continue to look really rocky. Honestly, the top 4 is looking a little bit shaky. They are definitely the least imposing member of the top 4 right now. They do pick up the win, but it is certainly not in convincing fashion. Hopefully, you know, this sparks something in RNG to maybe get it more consistent, but maybe this even sparks something in EDG that helps them with that final push towards the end of the season. That's going to bring us to our 7th and final day of Week 7 LPL action. And we kicked off Day 7 with the 2-0 series win here from Top Esports going up against Ultra Prime. And Top Esports looking pretty good in this one. Obviously, they should take care of Ultra Prime, and they did. Up continues to just kind of slowly get worse and worse and worse. And I will imagine it will continue to be like that. But what a diffy in the tiffy here, as I like to say. That top lane diff was not very close, huh? Obviously, Wayward sends his regards as he not only kicks Zoom off of his team, but then he obliterates him on his new one. This was absolutely disgusting to watch. Wayward's going to be my player of the series here. He was genuinely phenomenal. Those Gnar ults in Game 2 were really, really, really good. And Wayward continues to be one of the more promising young top laners in the world. Obviously, I think I've talked a lot about, like, Shanji and players like that so far this year, but, like, somehow Wayward kind of gets left under the rug as one of the best up-and-coming top laners in the region, mostly because he's on the best team in the region right now, and so it very much feels like, oh, he's like a right-now player. This kid's super young, he's got very, very little experience, and he's already absolutely gapping people in the top lane. A very good sign from Wayward. He could be one of the best top laners in the league for a long time here in the LPL. Tian also had a really good series here, 2 games of Poppy. You know how I love Poppy. I feel like every single time I talk about Poppy on this channel, it's because she wins, and that's all she does, is she just wins. Like, I would be picking this champion perma in pro if I could, but obviously I'm not a coach. Knight, Jackie Love, Mark, all of them were really good, especially Mark in that game 2 on the Nami, hitting those bubbles exactly when he needed. This TES team is just really freaking good, huh? Like, they're just a good League of Legends team. What else do I need to say? As for Ultra Prime, Zoom's not Zoom anymore. Yeah, this was about as far as I can go for Zoom in terms of, like, letting him off the hook. He was really, really, really not good here. He got completely gapped by Wayward, not only in game 1, but especially in game 2, just not good. He's going to be my dud of the series here. He just continues to show that he's not that same player. Like, he's just not that anymore. He's one of the worst top laners in the LPL. He has been for the course of the entire year. I'm pretty confident saying that. Hacker continues to just get out-jungled by everyone. I know being out-jungled by Tian isn't exactly the worst thing in the world, right? Like, Tian is one of the best junglers in the world, especially when he's on, but Hacker just continues to not really show a lot of fight. He continues to just not really have a lot of idea of pathing and timings and really any way to help his laners out at all. Cryin and Elk had a decent series. They continue to be the two players that I think are giga stuck on this Ultra Prime team, especially Elk, who I think is a very, very, very good player. He hasn't really shown it this year, but I still think he's a very solid, like a potential top 4, top 5, like world's caliber AD carry here in the LPL. Cryin, I think, has had a really decent season, even when the rest of his team is shut down. They can't determine a support. Xiaoxi, Miaonu, like whatever you want. Like, I don't know. Nobody there is going to be that good. Xiaoxi hasn't been good. Meow hasn't been that good. So I don't know. Ultra Prime's just a disaster. They're a bottom tier team. Outlook-wise, they're a bottom tier team. Even with Zoom, even with Cryin, even with Elk, they are a bottom tier team, and they will continue to be a bottom tier team for the rest of the year. Yes, they lost to 2 really good teams this week, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. They've looked the same against the bad teams as they have against the good teams. They don't look good. Top Esports continues to look like one of the best teams in the world, probably the best team in the LPL. Wayward absolutely dominating like this. Tian having a great series. Like, they didn't even really need Knight or Jackie Love in this series. And imagine me saying that. Like, that is absolutely unreal to talk about how good this team has gotten as a unit. And I hope that they can maintain it, because this is a Top Esports team that I've talked about a lot. I really, really want to see them do well. I am a fan of how they play League of Legends. I'm a fan of the players on this team. I want to see the Tian Revenge Arc, the Jackie Love Revenge Arc. I want to see Knight finally make a World Finals. There's just so many storylines on this team that I really hope go well. And a win like this is certainly reassuring that a lot of what I'm hoping continues as success is going to continue. That's going to bring us to our final series here of Week 7 LPL action. And our final series, the series to close out the week, was between OMG and Weibo Gaming. And Weibo picks up the 2-0 series win. Yes, they didn't even drop a single game. This is a brand new Weibo Gaming team, and I'm excited to see them. They could actually be pretty good, huh? Yeah, I mean, this was dominant. I mean, game 1 was relatively close for a bit. Just kind of a slow, methodical game that the Shy was able to eventually just win on the Gwen in those team fights. Some really great team fighting from him. Not to say that everybody else in the team didn't play well, but just, you know, some really great team fighting from the Shy. And then game 2 was an absolute demolition. What a cyberbullying performance. There's really no other way to put it. Have you ever been in solo queue and you pull your flash early to a jungle gank and you're like, well, you know, maybe the jungler won't come back over and over again. Well, that, you know, that's the feeling you have as Cream, and then just get slowly chipped away over and over and over and over again as SOFM decides, hey, I'm not a jungler, I'm the mid laner now. Die, Cream. And just kills him over and over and over again. What an absolutely disgusting performance here. SOFM's gonna get player of the series for that, because he was really, really dominant. Like, it was really disgusting just watching him do that over and over again. But, I mean, you know, honestly, like, this is exactly how you play jungle. Like, jokes aside, like, this is what you do. When you burn flash mid, you keep going mid, and you punish it over and over and over again. And that's what he did. He punished it over and over and over again. Some great Poppy games here from SOFM. Like I said, a really good Gwen game in game 1 from the Shy. Even a really good Jace game in game 2 from him. But game 2 was pretty much everybody on Weibo's coming out party. Angel, like I said, had a really phenomenal game 2. Was a big reason Cream got camped, was he burned that flash early. Cream was able to just get obliterated over and over again, but that Ahri was really making that dangerous because you land one charm. SOFM's probably there, and that's a free kill. So definitely a dangerous lane there. The top 3 of Weibo really doing their job. Hwanfeng and On were fine. They didn't really have to do much this series. Really, 2 games of Sivir, so shout out. But the Rakan was also mid lane quite a bit here in the game too. Definitely kind of disgusting to watch. But for OMG, really, this was just like, oops, you know, we lost. Like, it's hard to really notch this up to them just being worse, even though they are. They obviously were. They're a worse team. It's not close. This is just one of those games where it's like, yeah, I think any team in the world would have lost with Weibo Gaming playing like this. And they did. They lost. They lost hard. Cream got obliterated. He's clearly the dud of the series. He went 0-7 in game 2. He's obviously going to be dud of the series. He was not so good there. He got punished over and over again, but he wasn't the only one on this team who had any problems. Aki was really bad in both of these games. SOFM just had full control of the entire game. Obviously, I already talked about how well SOFM did, but Aki was a big reason for that too, of really just not having any sort of pressure, not putting any sort of objective pressure on SOFM to actually, you know, stay out of the mid lane, so a little bit of a problem there. Abel and Cold were just whatever in the bottom lane. Shanji is not the shy. Really, they were just the worst team from pretty much every aspect. Outlook-wise for these two teams, OMG's not looking so great this week. This is a team that I thought really could break into that back half of the playoffs, you know, be the number 10 seed kind of going into playoffs, but looking like this, probably not so much. As for Weibo, this is pretty much exactly what you wanted to see. You wanted to see them feel confident. You wanted to see them feel aggressive. And obviously, SOFM, who's probably been their least performing member of the split so far, having a phenomenal series here against OMG is definitely inspiring. They've got some pretty tough competition that's really going to show us if this team can actually be a Worlds team coming up here. The match against JDG is going to be very, very intriguing, but right now they look very scary when they're on, when the Shy is on, when SOFM's on. We haven't even really seen the best of Hwanfeng and On in the last few weeks. When this team is clicking on all cylinders, I find this team is going to be very, very, very difficult to beat. And, you know, it's going to be very, very fun to watch them try to take down some of the top teams in the LPL. All right, that is going to do it for my Week 7 LPL overview and analysis of all 7 days of LPL action. Up on the screen right now, you're going to see the updated Week 7 LPL standings from 1st to 17th. Any teams highlighted in green will be the teams that have locked playoffs as of this point. So that means Top Esports, JD Gaming, and Victory 5 have all locked their place into the playoffs for Summer Split. As of right now, everybody else, technically it's still possible to fall out. Obviously, some more likely than others. But yes, let's go over, as you can see in the first column, I've got my power rankings, and in the second column, how those have changed. Let's go over the biggest risers and the biggest fallers of Week 7, shall we? So the biggest riser this week is actually a tie. It's a 3-way tie. Edward Gaming jumping back up to 6. I actually thought they had a really good week here. They destroy Ultra Prime, and then they go and honestly, they should have beaten RNG. And that is a good sign. Viper continues to be looking like one of the best players in the world. If the rest of the team can kind of get on board, I think the CDG team can still make a Worlds push. Anyone's Legend jumping up to 8. I know they had kind of an up and down week, but there were a lot of other teams that I think disappointed me a little bit more. So they, by proxy, jump up to number 8 here. And then ThunderTalk actually jumping into my projected playoffs here, or my power ranking playoffs here, at number 10. They look like a playoff team, even if they don't actually make it because their record's just too far behind at this point. The addition of that new bot lane of Kepler and Yao Yao, Yukao really being unlocked, I think, in the last couple weeks, they do look like one of the 10 best teams in the LPL right now. Hopefully they can maintain that. Biggest faller this week, no shocker, going to go to OMG here. I had them as high as number 7 last week after a really, really good week. They proved this week that they are not even remotely close to that. Losing to ThunderTalk, getting absolutely obliterated by Weibo Gaming. They're actually going to fall all the way to number 11 for me. I still think there is a world, and that's realistic that they make playoffs. In fact, they're in them right now. They really don't have to turn around a lot for me to truly believe that they're a playoff team, but after this week's performance, it's just really hard for me to call them a top 10 team. Other fallers, FPX drops down just 1. For me, that's just to get EDG above them. FPX actually had a pretty good week, and I still think they're a really good team, but for me, I'm very interested to see what this Edward Gaming team does. I think them and FPX are like right neck and neck. 6 and 7, you can kind of flip-flop. I really don't care. And then IG jumps LGD just for they won a game, and LGD is stumbling across the finish line. So for me, they jump up to 15. Really not a lot to say there. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about our player of the week and our dud of the week here. My player of the week for Week 7 LPL action is going to go to Xiaohu on RNG. A really, really good week for Xiaohu. He was a big reason they were actually able to pull out a 2-0 week here, something that was very much in doubt for a lot of the week. So yes, Xiaohu is going to get my player of the week here. My dud of the week, no surprise, I think for a lot of people, is going to go to Cream on OMG, who just did not have it this week. He was abused by SOFM. He did not look good earlier in the week against ThunderTalk and UCal either. So yeah, he's going to fall, and he's going to get my dud of the week here. I know I'm high on Cream, but that doesn't mean that he is immune to getting my dud of the week in the performance standings here. So yes, Cream is my dud of the week, and Xiaohu is my player of the week. But yeah, that is going to do it. If you guys enjoyed, please go ahead and leave a like. It really does mean a lot to the channel. Let me know what your series of the week was, your player of the week, your dud of the week, down in the comment section below. You know I love chatting it up with you guys. But with that being said, I hope you all are having a great day. I hope you continue to have a great day, and I will see you all later.